Good afternoon and welcome to a new episode of the Guru's Perspective. Today I want to talk about what happened in college football playoffs, the semifinals, and I want to focus on the wild card weekend in the NFL. I want to start off and talk about what happened in college and the football news. There was a lot of crazy things that happened, but yet it was very exciting as well. Some really good games. The first game I would like to talk about was the game between Notre Dame and Penn State. Very good contest between two worthy teams. It was really weird to me that Riley Leonard was the one who didn't play as clean as I thought he would. And Drew Allard played mediocre at best. I don't want to down him, but I don't feel like he got the ball to the receivers like he needed to. And I just really felt like that was a head scratcher because they wasn't even involved in the game. Riley Leonard had 223 yards. He had a touchdown and he had two picks on the day. Jeremiah Love was pretty good on the ground as well. He had 45 yards and he had a touchdown, but he got the yards and he got the score when they needed it. Jaden Grayhouse was a name that I wasn't really too familiar with until that game. He had 7 receptions for 105 yards and he had a touchdown on the day. Drew Allard was like 12 of 23, 135 yards, and he had an interception on the day. He had a really funky game. You could tell he was rattled by Notre Dame and their defense, and they kind of bullied, him. On the other hand, Penn State looked really sharp too, man. I feel like if Drew Allard could have got the wide receivers a little bit more involved in the game, that it possibly could have went the other way. The only person who really got a chance to eat on their side of the ball was Nicholas Singleton, the running back. He had a really solid game. He had 15 carries for 84 yards, and he had 3 scores on the game. Just was really surprised that a lot of the receivers didn't really get involved. Tyler Warren was involved, but he couldn't get the ball in the end zone. But the receivers was missing in this one, and it was a head scratcher. The game was very close, but it was decided at the very end when you look and you thought, okay, Drew Allen's about to drive the ball and at least get a touchdown or a field goal to ice the game. That didn't materialize. He took the ball down. He made a vital mistake. And then when you give a team the ball with like less than 2 minutes and they get that possession and they drive the ball down and kick a field goal at the end of the game, oh, that was a heartbreaker, man. I know Marcus Freeman was ecstatic because a lot of people laughed at Notre Dame this year after they lost to Northern Illinois, and they went on to win 11 straight games after that. So, much praise to Notre Dame and that organization and Marcus Freeman for his coaching and his coaching staff as well. That final score was 27-24, and they're moving on to the championship round. The second game was really surprising too because it seems like Texas always get to that semifinal or to the final four teams, but they cannot make it past that hump. Drew Allard, not Drew Allard, Quinn Ewers actually looked solid that game. Most times I give him a hard time. I've been very critical of him. And I said, man, these guys are kids, man. Yeah, a lot of people, overhype Texas sometimes, but at this point this year they didn't because Texas was a really good team. They was last year too. I feel like what they're bringing to the table now is good for football. And I still feel like that's a solid team. It was just not their year, unfortunately. Quinn Ewers had 283 yards, 2 touchdowns, and he had a pick on the day. Jalen Blue looked actually really solid in this game. He had 5 receptions, 59 yards, and he had 2 touchdowns. Will Howard had 289 yards. He had a touchdown, and he had a pick on the day. But Ohio in that defense, man, Ohio State, they were really, hungry. They were aggressive, and they really played good football, good fundamental football. They had a good run game. They was passing the ball at will, and they just was sound on both sides of the ball. I know a lot of people might not like to hear me say that, especially because we're Michiganders, but I have to give credit where credit is due. Ryan Day definitely might have saved his job, and it's funny too because when I was hearing on NFL Network, they was giving Rich Eisen a hard time, saying that loss to Michigan might have motivated them to go all the way and win the championship. And I definitely hope that don't materialize, but it's a possibility. That final score was when Jack Sawyer got that strip fumble and he ran it all the way back 80 yards because the score was close and it looked like when they were in the red zone that they were about to go and score because it was back and forth the whole game. But when Quinn Ewers got that fumble and then Jack Sawyer ran it back for the touchdown, that was the X factor of the game, and that was the icing on the cake. That final score was 28-14, and Ohio State is going to the championship now. I think Notre Dame was saying, bring on Ohio State. If that's what you want, you got it. And it might not be really what y'all want right now, in my opinion. Because that 28-14 victory and then the way they beat up on everybody else, man, you guys might have a little bit more than you can handle. I want to move on and I want to go to the NFL and I want to talk about the wild card rounds. And I want to start off with the Chargers and the Texans. That game was a lackluster game, was a little disappointed because in this case, how good Justin Herbert played this season. He had over 30 touchdowns and he had 3 interceptions. And in one game, he had 4 INTs. He had 242 yards. He had a touchdown and 4 picks. One of them went back for a touchdown. Lad McConkey, he balled out. That was the only person that showed up on the team. He had 9 receptions for 197 yards and he had a score. I'd expected more from J.K. Dobbins too, but he didn't really do much. He had 9 carries for 26 yards. C.J. Stroud had 282 yards. He had a touchdown and a pick on the day. Joe Mixon was the workhorse, and he definitely gave them the help that they needed. He had 25 carries, 106 yards, and a score. And Nico Collins had 7 receptions for 122 yards and a touchdown. Unfortunately, with those 4 picks that he threw, those critical picks, one of them went back for a touchdown, and the other one set up them to score. And that final score, 32-12, basically still make it like a question mark is how good really is Justin Herbert? I can't really discredit him right now. I feel like Coach Jim Harbaugh, he just got there. And I think that he's going to coach him up and he's going to be good. I mean, this year was like a little, example right now. I mean, it's pretty cool to see what happened with him this year. This guy had an awesome year, 30 plus touchdowns and only 3 interceptions. It's different when it gets to the playoffs too. That's what I tell people. I've seen Rex Ryan talking mess saying that, that the Chargers had a bye week and, the Texans took it personal. I feel like whatever your record is, you got to throw that out the window in the playoffs. And the record is 0-0, and you got to go and you got to compete and you got to play against the best and try to come out on top. And that's the reason why when it comes to the playoff, it's a whole different animal than the regular season. But that 32-12, it was really bad because now I'm trying to see what's going to happen. Khalil Mack is talking about he considering retirement. I know they're going to move on from Joey Bosa. I think that those contracts is too high. I thought they were going to get rid of both of those guys this year. They ended up getting rid of the receivers and they took a pay cut. But I still don't think that they'll be able to afford them. So I definitely want to see what's going to happen this offseason now after that game. I want to talk about the Baltimore Ravens and the Pittsburgh Steelers. This game was crazy to me because at first the Steelers beat Baltimore in Pittsburgh. They played a really sound game. It was a lot of mistakes on, the Baltimore Ravens' part. They wasn't clicking like they need to. A lot of times, Lamar Jackson tried to put the ball in his hand and play hero ball and win games. When you had that dude, Derrick Henry, behind you, and when you try to do too much, that's when it seemed like the game plan kind of go out the window. But at this point, it was totally different. They beat them at the end of the year, and then they found out that's who they was going to play in the playoffs, and they did the exact same formula. Lamar Jackson had 175 yards and 2 touchdowns, and that workhorse, Derrick Henry, had 186 yards and 2 touchdowns as well. Russell Wilson had 270 yards and 2 touchdowns, but Najee Harris didn't even come to play that day. He had 6 carries for 17 yards. George Pickens had 5 receptions for 87 yards, and he had a score on the day, but it just seems like something's not right with that dude. You had the Deontay Johnson issues, you had the Mike Wallace issues, the Antonio Brown issues, Antonio Holmes. And he's one of these guys. It's starting to materialize with him. He wasn't happy when they had Justin Fields, and then when they got Russ, he was saying he was excited about the situation because he wanted to play with him, and they played a lot together, and they had chemistry around the time when they were playing in practice. They finally get that opportunity, and he looked good because Russ can throw one of the better rainbow passes, and he was throwing the ball up so George Pickens make a 50-50 play. Everything looked good right at first, and things were going well in Pittsburgh until it wasn't. They lost those games, those 4 games straight going into the playoffs, and things just fell from there. And at the end of this contest, the 28-14 thumping, because that game wasn't even really close, they asked George Pickens in the media in the press conference, how did he feel? Did he feel like things got better and improved through the year? And he was like, yeah, somewhat. And he said, do you think it improved enough to be, optimistic going into next season? And he said, no. So, yeah, that's just Pickens being Pickens. I had issues with him before and how he dogged it out and didn't block and didn't do things for some of his teammates. Some people might not feel that way, but I'm a little bit more old school. If you're not doing to produce for your team, you don't need to be on your team then, man. You need to go elsewhere. But then a lot of people, if it's not about them, they make it about them. So in this case, their season is over with, so they'll have to figure out what they got to do. They got a lot of problems to handle. Not sure if Russ will be back. I don't know what they're going to do with Justin Fields. I definitely feel like they should go for a first round or go for a quarterback now. And on top of that, Mike Tomlin have some things to answer too, man. You lost 6 playoff one and dones in a row. You might be a playoff team to make it to the playoffs every year, but you're out every time in the first round. It kind of remind me of the Detroit Lions and Jim Caldwell at the time. I want to move on, and I want to talk about the Denver Broncos going to Buffalo. That game wasn't even close. The crazy part about it was Bo Nix threw a haymaker at the beginning of the game, and it started off 7-0. And I said, man, we might have us a ball game. They didn't score after that, and that score was 31-7. Bo Nix, like I said, had 144 yards through the air and a touchdown. And that was basically the only thing to materialize in that game on that side of the ball. The defense played okay, but to give up 31 points, that might not be that great. And Buffalo, on the other hand, Josh Allen had 272 yards in the score. James Cook really has been the workhorse. He stepped his game up last season, especially in the playoffs, and now he definitely just ran with it this season. Gained a couple pounds. You can still see the quickness. That guy's been very elusive, and I have to give credit where credit is due because not only did they got a good pass game, now the ground game complements that. He had 23 carries, 120 yards in the score. And Curtis Samuel had 3 receptions for 68 yards and a touchdown. The best part about their team now is the balance, not just, offensive defense, but the special teams and the way those guys are not divas and want the ball or they have a me first mentality. It's about the team over there. And they have a lot of good players over there, man, and a lot of balls to distribute, pause. But at the same time, I definitely appreciate what I'm seeing over there in Buffalo. And that thumping was something that people got to definitely keep in mind that, yeah, they got explosive offense, but the defense has been playing lights out, especially after getting rid of a lot of the veterans. The Packers and the Eagles game, man, it was definitely lackluster. I know a lot of people was hitting me up on social media, saying how bored the game was. Yeah, I dozed off a few times in this one. It just seemed like nobody could get anything going. It was a really good defensive matchup. Boy, Jalen Hurts looked confused out there at times, and he had like 131 yards through the air, 2 touchdowns. Saquon Barkley handled his business on the ground with 25 carries and 119 yards. But Jordan Love, and I think a lot of people put too much pressure on him, saying he was be the MVP and the Super Bowl favorite. And they got a really nice young team over there. The defense, the offense look good, but I still feel like they need a true number 1 wide receiver over there. Definitely after Christian Watson got hurt, Romeo Dobbs got hurt in that game, so it was a lot of issues in that game. But that's when Jordan Love started to play his hero ball. He had 212 yards and he had 3 interceptions on the day. And Josh Jacobs had 81 yards, and he had a score. And that was basically the only score of the game besides the field goal. And that final score was a funky score, 22-10. This was actually the best game to me that happened over this weekend. It was the Washington Commanders versus the Tampa Bay Buccaneers. And you seen everybody had the Buccaneers moving on, but then you could say and give your predictions, but it don't mean that it'll materialize. This game was a really close back and forth game, and when Tampa got the ball back, I said they gave them enough time to where if they can move the ball down the field, that Tampa can win, and they was moving the ball pretty convincingly the whole game. When Baker Mayfield muffed that run play and put it on the ground, and it was an instant red zone opportunity, and Washington scored, and then they didn't do nothing with the ball and gave the ball back to them at the end of the game to where Jalen Daniels was able to take the ball down and set his team up to win with the field goal. And the funny part about it was with the field goal, they were saying how iffy the kicker was and how he didn't really do as well at the season. And it was like that was kind of jinxing him before it even happened. But when he kicked the ball for the game winner, it doinked off of the goal post and went in. And I know that they were sick because I feel like this year Mike Evans had a really solid year, and Baker Mayfield's always one of the better players. And he was a comeback player of the year to me, and he was one of those guys who I feel like could have been an MVP candidate. Still had the stats, but unfortunately, that fumble cost them to be in the playoffs. He had 185 yards and he had two scores, and Mike Evans looked pretty good too with 7 receptions, 92 yards, and a touchdown. And he gave Marcus Lattimore all he can handle. Bucky Irvin did okay on the ground with 17 carries, and he had 77 yards. But Jaden Daniels was the X factor. He had 268 yards, two scores. He even rushed for 36 yards. And people don't give Terry McLaurin, aka Scary Terry, his credit, man. He looked really good, man. 7 receptions, 89 yards, and a score. And he had so many bad quarterbacks, until he really got a good one now, and to be able to make it in the playoffs. And this is their first appearance since 2006. So congratulations to the Washington Commanders. Unfortunately, you got to go to Detroit. And I'm not trying to say, you guys are just going to get stumped because I don't know. I can't predict who's going to do what, but I feel like, yeah, in that environment, man, yeah, I heard the chants, after the game. I don't know if that's what y'all want right now. The 23, the 20 basically meant for it was just really good theatrical football. That was one of the better games that went to the end. The Minnesota Vikings played the Los Angeles Rams. And this is something I want to talk about too. I feel like Coach Dan Campbell gave them bulletin board material for shaking Kevin O'Connell's hand and saying, I'll see you guys in 2 weeks. I feel like the Rams felt some kind of way. Former quarterback of the Detroit Lions, Matthew Stafford, felt some kind of way. And sometimes that's all you need is just a little bit of motivation, some bulletin board material to get your team going. But with the Los Angeles Wildfires, I think that definitely gave them the motivations. And I want to send my thoughts and prayers to everybody in Los Angeles. And I just feel like that really motivated them as far as the Wildfire, the rally, because they couldn't even play at home. They had to go to a neutral ground in Arizona and play. But at the same time, the Dan Campbell comments to see you in 2 weeks to Minnesota, they felt some kind of way, and they definitely proved that in the game. Before the blink of an eye, they were up 10-0. Stafford had 209 yards and two scores, and it just really wasn't even close. They got a pick, and then they got one ran back on them. I think that pick was one that got ran back too, and that was the interception that Sam Darnold threw because he had 245 yards and a touchdown with the pick. And the funny thing is, only person who scored was it was 5 receptions, 64 yards, and the score was T.J. Hawkinson. And by that time, the game was well over with. They tried to go for two and missed the 2-point conversion as well, but they basically put a lot of pressure on Sam Darnold, and he just couldn't play. Man, I feel like we gave a lot of the blueprint to beat him, how we put the pressure on him and how we made him, nervous and he was hesitant and constantly running for his life in the pocket. You got to give credit to Aaron Glenn and his game plan because you can't let him sit back and just tear you apart in that pocket. And when you rush him, you can tell that he's a different animal. But yeah, I never thought that they were going to get beat 27-9. But at the end of the game, I said, yeah, Dan Campbell need to be careful with his words and how he say things. And the good news right now is the fact that they're going to be moving on and they'll play Philly, and we play the Washington Commanders. But I still was saying, hey, be careful for what you want and what you ask for, because now Minnesota Vikings, after having a really good year, 14-3, they're going to be at home. So any given Saturday or Sunday, that's what I look at. It was a really good weekend. A lot of blowouts, but then, some good football on top of that as well. I still feel like it's going to be better in this divisional round. I want to start off with the Washington Commanders and the Detroit Lions. They have the Detroit Lions. I looked at it earlier and then it just went down a half a point. They had the Detroit Lions up by 10 points. Now it's 9.5, and it might shift and go down a little bit more, as the week go about. I'm looking at this and I'm saying that I'm gonna go under anyway, and I feel like it's going to be a good contest. And if Detroit win, it possibly might be by a touchdown, maybe a little under. But you never know in the playoffs, man. Detroit's going to have to play because they had a week off. They might have a little bit of rust. I know they're here in Detroit, but sometimes, man, teams get overwhelmed, and you can't underestimate any opponent. But I'm definitely rolling with my team, and I will definitely take them by 7 points. I'll go a little under what they're saying right now. Kansas City's even went down a little bit now, a half a point. Texans versus the Chiefs. They have the Chiefs by 7.5. I'll go a little under that as well. The Rams and the Eagles, they have the Eagles by 6. I'm going to go a little under that. If the Eagles win, they'll win by 3. But I think in this case, if they play like they did last week, the Rams might be in for an upset. The Ravens and the Bills. I'm going to go with the Ravens, and I'll take that 1 point because they're in Buffalo, so it can go either way. This is more like a toss-up game, but I'll give the Ravens the slight favor. Definitely after how they rolled over the Bills in earlier in the season. It's still a different part of the season. It's the playoffs. But if they keep running that ball with Derrick Henry and you can't stop him, and Lamar Jackson play as well as he do, the X factor in this one too is trying to figure out if Zay Flowers is going to play. That's one of the huge X factors. If Zay Flowers play, it might be, yeah, I'll take them for sure. But you never know. If he don't play, it might be a little closer. But yeah, I'll still take that. I think it's safe to go with 1 point, even though they're in Buffalo. Because if that defense play the way they've been playing and they can play the way they've been playing as a collective unit, yeah, I think the Ravens will take them out in this game. I want to go on now and I want to give you guys some of my X's and O's. You know what the playoffs and what's going on right now. I want to start off with the Wildcard stats. The leaders in quarterback and running back rushing duos. In 2024, the Baltimore Ravens with Derrick Henry and Lamar Jackson have 2,836 yards. And that leads all running back quarterback duos in rushing. 2024, the Eagles with Saquon Barkley and Jalen Hurts had 2,635 combined rushing yards. In 2012, the Washington Commanders with Alfred Morris and Robert Griffin III had 2,428 yards. In the playoffs, too, C.J. Stroud versus Jim Harbaugh. It's funny. Again, it's interesting because this was a college rivalry at one point. Jim Harbaugh beat C.J. Stroud with the Michigan Wolverines as the head coach. The first time they beat them, it was 42-27. Second time, Michigan beat Ohio State, it was 45-23. But the momentum has changed right now. In the NFL in 2025, C.J. Stroud is 1-0 against Coach Harbaugh. So I definitely want to see how that's going to materialize now that they're in the pros. And I definitely feel like we might have a rivalry going on Texas and the Los Angeles Chargers. The last time the Steelers won a playoff game, they beat the Kansas City Chiefs on January the 15th, 2017, and the score was 18-16. But on January 22nd, 2007, they lost to the Patriots 36-17. Then January 2018, they lost to the Jaguars 45-42. January the 10th, 2021, they lost to the Browns, the Baker Mayfield-led Browns 48-37. January 16th, 2022, they lost to the Kansas City Chiefs in a blowout 42-21. January 15th, 24, they lost to the Buffalo Bills 31-17. And just recently in the wild card round, January 11th, 2025, they lost to the Baltimore Ravens 28-14. The Ravens had 19 first downs and the Steelers only ran 18 plays. Let that sink in. They had 19 first downs to their 18 plays ran. The Baltimore Ravens also outgained the Steelers by 249 yards in the first half. Lamar Jackson and Derrick Henry combined for 267 yards rushing in their win over Pittsburgh. The second most rushing yards by a quarterback and running back teammate duo in a playoff game behind Colin Kaepernick and Frank Gore in 2012 divisional playoffs versus Green Bay, and that was 300 yards total. Lab McConkey had 9 catches for 197 yards, setting an NFL rookie record for receiving yards in the playoffs. The only players, rookie or not, with more receiving yards in the playoff debut was Megatron, a.k.a. Calvin Johnson, with 211 in 2011, the wild card round, and Demaryius Thomas, he had 204 in 2011 wild card round as well. Justin Herbert in the regular season had 504 attempts without any, with basically only 3 interceptions. That's what I should say. He had only 3 interceptions. The wild card round versus Houston, he had 34 pass attempts with 4 interceptions, and 1 was ran back for a touchdown. And that's what I was saying. He had 4 picks and 1 was ran back for a score. And that was just sad to see with him because I feel like he played so well this year. But I mean, things change in the playoffs. You know, you got to throw all what you did and your accomplishments in the regular season to the back burner. You got to focus on rebooting and hitting the reset button and trying to make your own stats and make your own record in the playoffs. And that's basically what every team trying to get to the next step, and that's making it to a Super Bowl. Jaden Daniels in his postseason debut, he had 24-35 completions on attempts, 304 yards, 2 touchdowns, and a game-winning drive. An incredible playoff performance from a rookie. And people got to realize this guy's still a rookie, but he done seen the main stage. He done played in the SEC, Arizona State. He done played some big collegiate football. And now this stage doesn't really rattle him. So I definitely say congratulations to making it to the next round. Consolation prize is you got to come to Detroit now. But I hope I can back those words too. The last time Washington won a playoff game, Mark Brunell was 7-15 in passing, 41 yards, and an interception. Clinton Porras had 16 carries for 53 yards in the score, and Santana Moss led the team with 11 receiving yards. Some really lackluster, stats here. But check this out, though. Late great Sean Taylor returned a fumble for a touchdown. Washington beat the same team, the Tampa Bay Buccaneers, 17-10, and this was January 7th, 2006. In the playoffs since 2020, the Buffalo Bills are 0-4 against the Kansas City Chiefs and the Cincinnati Bengals. But they are 6-0 versus everyone else. So I definitely want to see what's going to happen here because I feel like whoever wins this game, which is the Bills and the Ravens, will give Kansas City all they can handle. Kansas City's trying to make a three-peat right now. These are the only 2 things I feel like can stop them going to that next level if they do make it to the Super Bowl. And Lord knows if the Detroit Lions are able to make it that far, I definitely still have my pick as the Lions going on and winning, but you can never count out the heart of the champion in the Kansas City Chiefs. I'd like to wrap up everything by saying thank you all for chiming in. I appreciate all the love and support from everybody. You definitely making my dreams a reality. I love y'all. And if you want to catch me on my networks, you can catch me on Hoovie. That's on Instagram. Sports Guru 2U is my Facebook page where I put all my late breaking news and stats and scores. And you can catch me too right now on TikTok. I'm not sure how long that's going to last. It's Hugh.Lee6, but I'm definitely hoping that we can have more TikToks. I appreciate all the advertisement and the love I'm getting on there. So definitely want that to continue. You can catch me on the Guru's Perspective every Tuesday at 1 p.m. And last but not least, you can catch me on Wednesdays as well on the Guru Sports section at 9 o'clock. Don't forget to link up on my YouTube page too. Click, like, and subscribe. Thank you all and have a blessed day. Until the next episode, see you then.